The great Pan is dead. What happened to him? We begin our adventure looking at Plutarch, the Greek biographer and historian, among other things. And I'm not going to read all of this. I'll probably read some and kind of summarize other parts, but it starts here. I have heard it reported from a person that was neither fool nor knave, being Epitherses. And so this wizened man was on this ship with a number of people and goods, and they were sailing along until one day, immediately a voice was heard by most of the passengers, who were then awake, taking a cup after supper, calling unto one Thomas, with a voice so loud that all of the company was amazed, which Thomas was a mariner of Egypt, whose name was scarcely known in the ship. He returned no answer to the first calls, but to the third he replied, Here I am, the man. Then the voice said aloud to him, When you arrive at the Pallades, take care to make it known that the great god Pan is dead. Epitherses told us this voice did much astonish all that heard it, and caused much arguing whether this voice was to be obeyed or slighted. Thomas, for his part, resolved, if the wind permitted, to sail by the place without saying a word. But if the wind ceased, and there ensued a calm, to speak and cry out as loud as he was able what he was enjoined. Being come to Pallades, there was no wind stirring, and the sea was as smooth as glass. Whereupon Thomas, standing on the deck, with his face toward the land, uttered with a loud voice in his message, saying, The great god Pan is dead. He had no sooner said this, but they heard a dreadful noise, not one only of one, but of several, who to their thinking groaned and lamented with a kind of astonishment. And many people heard of this. The people on the ship went out. This story spread across the land, and the emperor calls Thomas up to start looking into this. And this is a massive event that echoed out across the land. So what happened to Pan? To understand all of this, we're going to jump over to Jesus and the apostles at Caesarea Philippi. And this is the place where Jesus established the church, where there's this famous disputed passage where Christ is professed by Peter when he asks him, Who are you? And Peter says, Thou art the Christ, Son of the living God. And then very soon after, immediately after, Jesus establishes the church. Now, we're not going to get into any of the debates over the passage, but instead we're going to look at this area of Caesarea Philippi, because where Jesus chose to establish his church is fascinating. So we can look at this map and see Caesarea Philippi. And they're down here, and zooming back, this is in an area called the Golan Heights now. And it's right here, like at the top end of Israel, right south of Lebanon. And so let's zoom in here and look at this area. Where were they? So just up above them, there's a place. This wasn't here in Jesus' time, but is Nimrod's fortress. And this was a fortress built by the Crusaders. And it was named after the famous Nimrod. And this site here points out that Nimrod was said to have hung out on this mountain. And so they named the fortress when they built it there, Nimrod Fortress. Now, Nimrod, side note, Masonic legend says that Nimrod was actually the first Grand Master of Masonry. So things like the Cook manuscript and later manuscripts, this form of the legend ascribes the origin of masonry to the era of building the Tower of Babel, is what that's referring to. Nimrod is made the Grand Master and makes the first charge, that is, frames the first constitution that the Masons ever had. Now, whether you believe that or not, it is important to know that the Masons claim origin back to this time, as well as others. So moving forward, though, up the hill, further, or up the mountain actually, we see Mount Hermon, just up above Caesarea Philippi. Now, what is Mount Hermon? This was said to be, in the book of Enoch, actually the place where the angels fell from heaven and came down and intermingled with the women. And you have the birth of the Nephilim. Now, Enoch is extra-biblical literature. You can certainly debate that, but this Mount Hermon has a lot of history. There's all sorts of pagan mythology around this whole area, and the story of the Nephilim in Enoch is just one of many. So this whole area, actually, we have this is another article I pulled up. This is Father Stephen DeYoung talking a little bit about these mountains, Tabor and Hermon, and he points out the name Hermon for this mountain lacks its original resonance in English, in which it sounds like the much later derived Hermon. It comes from, however, the Hebrew word harem, or the same root of the Arabic word, which I'm sure you've heard, haram. And this is the word for something that means banned or forbidden or accursed. And so, like, Mount Cursed is, like, essentially a valid name for that. And this was, like, because this was a key place of pagan worship. And yeah, he points that out as well. He points out the Enoch connection. And he says the earliest references to the god that dwelt on this mountain, which flowed from the spring, which forms a tributary on the Jordan River, are to Baal God or Baal Hermon. So Baal is one of these demonic figures that we see in the Bible pretty consistently. After the conquest of Alexander the Great, the cave and its surroundings were rededicated as Panias, or also Banias, but that Panias is a better way to look at it, because it's all about worship to the god Pan. So this area where Jesus walked into was this center of pagan worship, and particularly that of the god Pan. And so here's like, this is from, if you actually go and visit the location at Caesarea Philippi, this is one of the plaques that shows what the area looked like. So you can see kind of a recreation of what all these pagan temples in the area at the time might have looked like. And it kind of lists some of these different areas down here. And you'll see that the grotto of the god Pan, the court of Pan and the nymphs. We have temple of Zeus and court of Nemesis, and temple of the sacred goats, temple of Pan and the dancing goats. So a lot of Pan more than any of the other gods here, but many pagan gods can be associated to this whole area. Here's another image of that shot, just so you can get a better look of what this area might have looked like at thousands of years ago. So another article I came across was this one talking about an old temple that was uncovered to the god Zeus Cassios. And it says, this is a merger of ancient religious traditions. Zeus Cassios is an example of the legacy of religious multiculturalism in antiquity. I just thought it was funny how they decided to word this. But it says down here, the mountain, which is currently called Jebel al-Aqra, was also an ancient Canaanite cult site. It was considered sacred by several ancient cultures, sometimes as the home of all gods, and was where the storm god Baal Zephon was worshipped. And then it says a little bit further, the Greeks later transferred the cult of the god of the mountain to Zeus Cassios, or Zeus of Mount Cassios. So when you have like Baal Hermon, that's like Baal of Mount Hermon. And you see that pretty consistently with a lot of these gods, where it's like either a god and then the name of another god that they've been merged with, or it's like the god and dash the name of like the area that they're worshipped in, because you also have like different versions of all these gods, and they kind of paganism, that's very much they're mix and matching different stories of different gods in their area. So it's very kind of messy to sort through how one god can become another. But sometimes we have these very direct connections where we have the monument or area itself shows you that it was like for both of these gods, and these ancient peoples connected these gods themselves. And those are some of our best connections when we're trying to see which gods turned into other gods. But it's all very messy. So anyway, on this idea of the mountain of God, we see the Mount of God describing both the Christian God, and we see like this associated with pagan gods. And when you look at the passage, that there's only one passage in the Bible that mentions the name Lucifer, and it's in Isaiah. It says, "How you are fallen from heaven, O Lucifer, son of the morning." And a bit later it says, "For you have said in your heart," so this is what Lucifer is thinking, "I will ascend into heaven. I will exalt my throne above the stars of God. I will also sit on the mount of the congregation. On the farthest sides of the north, I will ascend above the heights of the clouds. I will be like the Most High." Satan is all about replacing God. Think the term Antichrist. It's not just against Christ. It's about replacing Christ. Everything Satan does is about this twisted, evil mirror of what God does. And so that's a big part, I would say, of like why you have these kind of different holy mountains in the Bible, and also these like pagan mountains. And it's all very interesting and quite messy. Now, something else that I noticed while I was looking into all this, Caesarea Philippi, this whole area is really interesting. There's a lot of lore in there. But I saw a number of the sites that talked about this area actually calling there's a giant cave there. And some of these sites actually say that cave was called in Jesus' day. So this is from the site Israel My Glory, and this is an article from Jesse King. And I think Jesse did a very poor job with this article, because he says, in Jesus' day, this doorway was called the gates of hell. The pagan residents believed that it was a gateway to the underworld, and they came to worship fertility gods that they thought lived there in the water. It was here at the gates of hell that Jesus declared he would build his church, blah, blah, blah. All right, so I looked everywhere to find, was this place actually called the gates of hell? I saw a lot of websites repeating it, but I could not find anywhere that this was referred to, especially in ancient times, particularly. There might be people now who want to call this area that because of this new Christian context, but I can't find a thing that refers to this, and I looked really hard to find it. Another thing I noticed while I was looking through all these sites and articles and books trying to figure this out, I saw other people saying that the Romans called this place the Rock of the Gods. And it says here, this terrible little article by Elliot Ritzema, he says that Jesus called it the gates of Hades. And now, again, I really am not trying to get into the actual establishment of the church issue here, but like Jesus absolutely does not turn around and say, "Hey guys, look where I brought you. We're at this place called the the rock of the gods, and over there is the cave called the Gates of Hell. I just wanted you guys to know that. That's not even remotely what happens in the passage. And I started to think, like, I'm pretty sure that this isn't a real thing, but I'm just trying to do my due diligence to see if this is a real name. If you look at like the plaque at the area, this is a picture of it. It mentions that this was, the grotto of Pan, and there were sacrifices in this cave, and it talks a little bit about that, but it doesn't call this area what some people are saying it's called, the Gates of Hell. I was like, where did this come from? And I was trying to find it. I eventually came across this article, which referenced Michael Heiser's The Unseen Realm when talking about this. And I actually have that book, so I pulled it out. I haven't really read this book yet, but I like weird stuff, so this was sitting on my shelf. So I tried to see, what did Mike Heiser actually say about this? So if you don't know who Mike Heiser was, he passed away last year, unfortunately, but he was a Protestant scholar who was really into just all of the weird spiritual stuff in the Bible. He really liked looking at stuff with like the Nephilim and angels and just gods, and everything supernatural in the Bible is what he liked to focus on. So anyway, he wrote this book, The Unseen Realm. I'm trying to figure out what's he say about Caesarea Philippi, and checking in it, he points out on this one page that I first found, he says, Peter confesses Jesus as the Christ, the Son of the living God, at this rock. And then he says, parentheses, this mountain, Mount Hermon. So Mike Heiser is actually trying to argue that what Jesus is saying in that passage is that the rock is not Peter. It's not Peter's statement. It's not Jesus. It's the literal rocks that they're around. It's the literal mountain that they're standing in front of, is Mike Heiser's interpretation, which is kind of ludicrous, honestly. And so I looked. He says that this place was considered the gates of hell, quote unquote, the gateway to the realm of the dead in Old Testament times. And then he puts footnote number 15, which is, it says on that footnote, see chapter 24. All right. So I go over to chapter 24 here, and I start reading, and I find this passage. He says the linguistic note is intriguing because Bashan and Bathan both mean serpent. So the region of Bashan, which is kind of this greater area that we're talking about, was known as the place of the serpent. And then he says, as we saw earlier, the divine serpent became Lord of the dead after his rebellion in Eden. Then he says, in effect, Bashan was considered the location, to borrow a New Testament phrase, the gates of hell. So he says in the other chapter, though, this place was considered the gates of hell. So this is ridiculous. Nobody actually called it that title specifically. They did view this as like a connection to the undead, the land of the dead here, and there's all sorts of interesting stuff here. But to suggest that this place was actually called that specifically, it's I would say it's straight up dishonest. So a lot of sites seem to be repeating things like that. I can't find any evidence that this place was ever actually called the Gates of Hell, or this other one, the Rock of the Gods. If you can find a reference to either of those, please leave it down in the comments below, because I'd love to see it, but I can't find a thing. And I'm pretty sure that it just came from people trying to push their theology on the geography to try to justify how they view this passage. They're so desperate to say, oh no, it's not Peter. that they're, I don't know, making up this whole new idea that it's the debate doesn't even need that. Like there's like there's a common the other position is that like it's Peter's statement of faith that Jesus is the Messiah. Like that's the debate. The idea that it's actually talking about the physical location is kind of ludicrous. So yeah, there's just kind of a side path that I got on while I was doing this, but I had to figure out that name because a lot of people were referring to this area as if that was the actual name of it, which would be pretty interesting, but does not seem to be true. Now, another thing I noticed while I was trying to figure that out was, did people actually call this the gates of Hades back in the day? I found this one site, and it says, I believe this place is owned by the Rothschild family now. And yeah, the Rothschilds actually bought a ton of land in the Golan Heights. Here's an article that talks about that. I thought that was just kind of a funny little side note. Another thing that connects this land to deeply evil people. Because like, if you don't know much about the Rothschilds, if you're studying global corruption, you consistently see the name of Rothschild pop up again and again and again. And here's a picture of Jacob Rothschild posing with Marina Abramovic, who's a known witch. She's connected to all sorts of people, Pizzagate and things like that. I probably said a banned word. This video is going to get demonetized. Actually, my channel is demonetized. It doesn't matter. So anyway, this lady's a witch. She's terrible, connected to all sorts of powerful politicians as well as celebrities. And she's posing here with Jacob Rothschild. And they're standing in front of a painting, which is Satan summoning his legions of demons. It's very fitting for them to stand in front of that painting. Anyway, another kind of random little connection there to the Rothschilds, because why not? So let's focus now on Pan. And to focus on Pan, we're actually going to look, Pan's interesting because when we look at depictions of the devil, we often see him looking like Pan. You have the classic image of the little goat man. And we also have Baphomet. So this goat imagery, Pan type imagery is something that we see consistently in the occult and Satanism. And we see Christians and Satanists both kind of associating that, saying that there's a connection here. And I think Pan is, we'll see, the different reasons why Pan is such a good example to represent all of paganism, really. So to begin our focus on Pan, we're actually going to look now at some Egyptian stuff. So there's an Egyptian god named Min. And Min, like Pan, is a fertility god. And both of these gods were actually connected. And they were worshipped in the same spot. There was a city known as Akhmim now. And its deity was Min, in Hellenistic times identified with Pan, whence the name Panopolis, meaning the city of Pan. And this is also referred to as Chemis, or Chemis spelled differently. Min, so he's this fertility god. He's always depicted, I don't know how much you can see that, but he's always depicted in a very specific way. And it says Min was always a god of fertility and sexuality. He was also shown as a human male with a YouTube censorship. Min, bull of the great phallus. The fertility god was associated with Horus the Elder, Min Horus, in the Middle Kingdom, and with Amen also, Amen Min. But we care a little bit more about Min Horus. And yeah, we're talking about this Horus. Yeah. So the Min is closely associated with the god Horus. Hey, funny. So something I had found this god Min like many years ago, But he had another name, and it's called Chem. And I couldn't find this name Chem anymore. When I started looking at this recently, I had to try to figure out what happened here. So it says here that Min, God in the past erroneously named Chem, if you kind of look up that name on Wikipedia. And I eventually found this article that's suggesting that Min was... that there was a mistake done when translating the name. So it says, in a final insult to the god, 19th century scholars mistranslated the name as Chem. Chem meaning black in Egyptian. This was in fact one of his epitaphs related to his fertility aspect because black was associated with fertile soil of the Nile. The black soil was so central to the Egyptian way of life that the word also became a common term for the land Egypt itself. So there's this confusion of if the god is actually named Min or Chem. Like, I was trying to figure this out. I could not find anywhere that really expands on this, if there actually was a translation error or what happened, because all the books that I was looking at, or articles, everywhere I looked, I was mostly finding places referring to just one or the other. They were saying they either referred to Min or they referred to Chem. And I'm not going to show you all the sources. Doesn't matter. Here's one, though, that kind of connects them both. It says Chem or Min here, and this is from the Bradshaw Foundation. So this was one site of an Egyptologist that does still link them. But I couldn't figure out what exactly happened here. But regardless, whether Chem is a legitimate name for Min or not, there is this connection between Min directly to the land of Egypt. And yeah, so Chem was another name, or Kemet was another name for Egypt. So yeah, this god is very important in Egyptian mythology. Here's another source that used the name Chem. Random little side note here. This symbol that the website uses up at the top, that's the symbol for alchemy, and it's also the symbol of the Bavarian Illuminati. That circle with a little dot in the center. It's also a sun symbol. It's a lot of things. But yeah, this is just another site that refers to Chem. It says identified as Pan by the Greeks. So like I see, there's all these sources that normally either say Chem or Min. Anyway, they seem to be referring to this same god. So yeah, this is all interesting because out of this word, that's where we get alchemy. So yeah, looking at the etymology of that, there's no question it's tied to Egypt. This is the alchemical symbol for gold, and again, it's that Illuminati symbol. Also, coming out of this same kind of set of traditions, so alchemy kind of grows out of these pagan traditions, but we also have Hermeticism. So Hermes was actually the father of Pan. So you have alchemy and Hermeticism, which are kind of these underlying ideas behind all of these modern occult movements that we see. So here's another book. This is the Dictionary of Egyptian Gods and Goddesses. And it says here, this emblem or a standard on a mace head from Hierakonpolis indicates that Min is counted among the allies of King Scorpion. So Min is also connected to the rock. I think Min knows what the rock is cooking. And also, very interesting, sizable fragments of the 3 limestone colossal statues of men discovered at Quift and now in the Ashmolean Museum. That one, really funny. So what's that? What's up with that? Who's Elias Ashmole? This is a museum dedicated to the guy. Elias Ashmole is he's a key early Freemason. So let me read you a couple passages from this book, John Dee and the Empire of the Angels, from Jason Louv. And it says, on October 16th in 1646, Ashmole was initiated as a Freemason at Warrington while he was a prisoner of war. His diary entry of this event is one of the first known references to Masonry in England. He's brought up in this book because Ashmole was actually one of the guys who got a hold of the writings of John Dee. And if you don't know who John Dee is one of these key alchemists who started off this whole kind of modern esoteric thought, category of thought. So, yeah, Ashmole wanted John Dee's, and John Dee had been like channeling angels, as he called them. John Dee was channeling demons, and Elias Ashmole wanted in on that. So he got a hold of those documents. And then it says, it is also possible, though not proven, I think it's pretty clear that Ashmole himself created the Blue Lodge degrees of craft masonry, entered apprenticed, fellow craft, and master mason, through which all new masons pass. So it's really interesting. I'm not the only one connecting him, Ashmole, and all these things. That's actually where they decided to put the Min statue in the Ashmole Museum. It's quite a coincidence, I'm sure. It also says, by the Middle Kingdom, there was a deity, Min Horus, combining the attribute of those 2 gods. It says down below, the Greek writer Plutarch, hey, that's who we started with. It says that Plutarch states that Horus is called Min. Yes, there's a deep connection between those 2 gods. So yeah, all of that, very interesting. Pan, I really do think is just, he's the god to kind of represent all paganism. And you have this idea of pantheism, which we've got like Spinoza and people like that who are kind of thinking of like, well, all of the universe, we're all part of God. It's all one thing, or we're all in the mind of God, or some version of that. So you've got that. But you also have Pan. I mean, there's so many ways Pan is used. Pantheism and whatnot. So, but Pan means all. So it says another valid definition, according to our fine dictionary, is that could be referring to the toleration or worship of all gods, and that's the idea that kind of Eusebius brings up, is this kind of connection to Pan. So when Eusebius was kind of looking at what Plutarch had written, he says, so far Plutarch, but it is important to observe the time at which he says that the death of the demon took place, for it was the time of Tiberius, in which our Savior, making his sojourn among men, is recorded to have been ridding human life of demons of all kind, so that there were some of them kneeling before him and beseeching him not to deliver them over to Tartarus that awaited them. You have therefore the date of the overthrow of the demons, of which there was no record at any other time, just as you had the abolition of human sacrifice among the Gentiles, as not having occurred until after the preaching of the gospel had reached all mankind. Let then these refutations from recent history suffice. yeah, it's pretty amazing. And now if you go to Caesarea Philippi, you'll see just the crumbling ruins of all of these temples. And it's really incredible because this is where Jesus established his church, and he said that the gates of hell would not prevail over it. And if you look right in this area, just up the road from Caesarea Philippi, we have the Benias Spring Church. And yeah, it's really cool. And I found this video of this church. I'm just going to mute it here. But yeah, this is some aerial footage somebody got with a drone. Charbel Assassin, take a hike. Thank you. She's got a lot of beautiful aerial photography on this channel. So thanks a lot for posting this up. Yeah, we have this beautiful church. Not in use right now. It looks like it was damaged by a time and maybe even a bomb or a mortar strike. And yet it still stands tall while all of the pagan ruins nearby crumble. And it's really just an incredible picture, kind of showing us just symbolically that the church, no matter what it goes through, no matter how hard things get, the church still stands while all of these pagan traditions crumble. And ultimately, Jesus won, because Jesus is alive and Pan is dead. Pan just died, but Jesus came back from the dead. And all we have now is lingering ideas that have sprouted out of all of these old occult pagan traditions. Now we have these more modern esoteric versions of all of that, but it all just comes from the same thing it always was. It's always just been the enemies of God. It's just these pagan traditions, and yeah, it's just amazing. I love the symbolism of this area. I thought it was so cool when I learned about this, and I really wanted to take a deep dive into the symbolism surrounding this area, because this is where Jesus decided to establish his church. He walked into the heart of paganism, and he just crushed it. He defeated it. Truly incredible. And that's it for the video. So thanks a lot for watching. Side note, let me just update you a little bit on what I'm up to. So I have been taking some time off to write the book. Been working really hard on that. And, I had kind of decided to make this channel and pursuit of understanding all these things and teaching people about them as kind of a secondary thing in my life, instead of trying to make a career out of it. But once I've sat down and tried to focus on the book, I knew I wanted to at least finish a book. But I just have so much I want to share with people and explain to people, and just really focusing on all of this stuff again as my top priority. It's really got me thinking about what I'm doing with myself, and I just have so much more passion for all this type of stuff. I just want to learn about all these things, and I want to teach others about it as well. I want to help people find the truth, and so I want to try to give this another serious go again. So this video took me literally days to make. It's part of a larger project. I want to do a series of videos that's all kind of focused around these pagan gods and also the church that Jesus built. So really excited to continue on with all these topics. If you're able to donate, I would really appreciate that, but don't feel obligated if you're unable. But yeah, I've always felt really weird about money with doing this, because I want people to have the truth. I just want people to have the truth. I want people to know all this. So if it's weird, I've always felt really weird trying to like sell the things that I've learned, because I just want people to know. I want people to find the truth. And so I felt weird about it, but it's like I'm putting so much time in it, and I'm never going to be able to do this as my primary career if I don't get help. So if you want to donate, I would appreciate that. And if not, that's fine. Please at least smash that like button and share this with all your friends and your enemies, because everybody needs the truth. And thanks a lot for watching, guys. And I will see you soon. I will try to start posting regularly once again. See you next time.